Hey there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Hockey Raiders Playoff Preview Series. This is going to be our first video for round two. We're going to be discussing the Dallas Stars and Seattle Kraken. The Seattle Kraken got past the Colorado Avalanche in 7 games. It is Monday today as we record this. It was Sunday night that game came down, which was a dramatic finish for the Seattle Kraken. A lot of people super happy, including Adam, who's going to be here with us covering the Seattle Kraken for this playoff series. And then we got Matthew Zator, who's going to be covering the Dallas Stars, who was a little bit more decisive in that series as the Stars worked their way past the Minnesota Wild. Lots going on in Minnesota. Maybe we'll talk with Mariah at some point down the road about what's next for that team, but we're going to be covering the Stars in this playoff preview. So let's go through some really, really quick details about these two teams. Head to head, Dallas is 2-0-1 in the season, Seattle 1-1-0. They played each other a lot, actually, in March, kind of towards the end of the regular season here. So they do know each other quite well. To me, this is a series of the Stars have some veterans. They know how to win. Seattle Kraken's playing with found money at this point. I don't think anybody really expected them. They are a solid team, jumped a ton in the standings this past season, but I don't think people thought they were going to get past Colorado Avalanche, even though Colorado was kind of depleted with injuries. But Seattle played well. They got contributions from everybody in the lineup, and I'm sure that's going to be what they're looking for here in the series. So, Adam, let's start with you. First, how you doing, and what did you see when you were watching the Seattle Kraken versus the Colorado Avalanche?
Well, first off, exciting game yesterday. We always love it when an offside is the reason that a game doesn't go to OT. Just it's a weird feeling because a lot of us, like probably the majority of us, thought that we weren't going to be here writing articles. Like I'm in the midst of writing and finishing up the playoff preview versus the Dallas Stars, and I was expecting to be writing a season recap at this point. But you talk about injuries with the Colorado Avalanche. Let's not forget Jared McCann missing for almost half the series. Andre Burakovsky wasn't in that series as well. So the Seattle Kraken had their fair share of injuries to top players as well. But I mean, it was the way they won was the ultimate Seattle Kraken way. 15 players get goals. 18 of the 20 players in the series get points, led by Yanni Gourde, multiple or Stanley Cup champion, Gene Schwartz, Stanley Cup champion, another player, Justin Schultz, Stanley Cup champion, was great. Philip Grubauer just decided to go into playoff mode, which I don't know anybody saw coming based off of his regular season. And they're getting contributions from guys like Ty Cartier, who in his first playoff game scores a goal. Like this is the Kraken did exactly what they needed to do. They played an almost perfect series in the end, and people can argue about whether Jordan Eberle should have not been in that final game. The Kraken did what they had to do. The Colorado was not ready for what the Seattle Kraken did. They're a deep team. They're a team that can roll 4 lines. They're a team that can roll 3D, and they showed the hockey world kind of what they've been building this year. And if you watch the Kraken from the start of the year till now, it's unexpected that they beat the Colorado Avalanche. Let's just put it out there. But at the same time, it's not 100% because you could kind of see this coming based off of the way that the two teams entered the playoffs.
Yeah, you know what? When we did the first round series, I thought Colorado would win it, simply because I figured the Kraken were a team who didn't necessarily have a lot to lose, right? But when I'm watching this team play, I'm getting more of the Vegas Golden Knights initial season vibe than I am that Seattle doesn't care. And that is a huge thing. I mean, we saw what the Golden Knights did that first inaugural season when they went all the way to the final. If the Kraken are playing like that and they are motivated and as a group, they're coming together and saying, look, don't discount us. We are better. And we were pretty good, but we're better than people think we are. And we're going to take out the defending Stanley Cup champions just to show you. They're going to be an interesting team to watch. Let's move over to the Dallas Stars. Matthew, there was some higher end scoring. Europa Hits had the most points for Dallas. They pretty handily, I mean, there was a moment, I suppose, where Minnesota looked like they might be competitive in this thing, but it really, as the series wore on here, became mostly about the Dallas Stars, and the Wild weren't really in it. What did you make from this series? How did you think the Dallas Stars looked? Are they the favorites to you going into this series with the Kraken?
Yeah, well, like you said, I think the Stars, they had one hiccup. They lost 5-1 in one of the games. Lost game one in overtime, double overtime. So like whatever. But rest of the games won 7-3 game two, little close game in game four, 4-0, and then 4-1. So, I mean, a lot of the time Minnesota wasn't really in it. They didn't score a lot of goals. Goaltending wasn't good. They were really missing Joel Eriksson Ek. So, and they don't really have a number one center in the first place. So it's kind of hard to compete against a team that has, like you said, Rupe Hintz basically took over the series at a hat trick in one game, leads the playoffs in scoring right now. So it's like he was just on fire, and they were missing Joe Pavelski since game one, when he got taken out by Matt Dumba for concussion, and he's back, or he's scheduled to be back in this series. So now they're going to be full strength with their top line that was so good throughout the season. Robertson only scored 2 goals in the first series, so you'd think that he's going to want to be motivated to score more in this one. A lot of top end scoring. They got some contributions from Mason Marchment. Wyatt Johnston had a goal. Their deadline acquisition, Dadonov had 3 goals. So that was a big thing. Max Domi, I believe, had a goal as well. So it's like they had some scoring from around the lineup, but mostly by like Tyler Seguin jumped into the top line, and then on the top power play unit scored all his goals on the power play. So it's like special teams, I think, is going to be something that was a big thing in the series against the Wild. The Wild just couldn't kill any penalties, and they took so many. And that's basically what the series was. So a lot of high-end scoring from the power play in that series.
Well, and they had some people show, like you talk about Tyler Seguin. I mean, he showed up, right? Like he was pretty good for Dallas in that series. And if he's good, and you get in contributions from guys like Jamie Benn and other players that you don't necessarily think at this point in their career are going to be major factors for the Stars, once a guy like Jason Robertson kicks in there, I mean, look out, right? Like it could be very interesting. Adam, who were the key players for you in the series against Colorado? But maybe more importantly, who do you think the key players are going to be versus the Dallas Stars for the Kraken? Like Oliver Bjorkstrand, had 2 goals in the final game and hit 3 posts. Could have had 5 goals in that game. Like he was unbelievable. He was so productive and so dangerous throughout that entire game. Is he the guy you're looking at? Is there somebody else from Seattle that you're like, yeah, this is probably who's going to put? It's not putting there's no necessarily elite star on this team that's putting everybody on their back, but somebody, 1 or 2 people probably going to need to step up here, even if they do this by committee and sort of lead the charge. Who is that for the Kraken?
Well, mentioned him earlier. It's Philip Grubauer. This is a guy who, barring a 60 shot against in the New York Rangers Devils game today, is going to have the most shots against in the first round by any goaltender. And, while McKinnon, Rantanen, and Makar got their points, he really limited everybody else on the Kraken or on the Avs, and he even limited really them. He was massive on the penalty kill. Like the Kraken penalty kill was absolutely fantastic. Their power play, that is a whole nother thing that needs to be fixed completely. But it's Grubauer. If he can perform at the level that he did against the Colorado Avalanche, then the Seattle Kraken will have a chance to advance. Now, the difference between Colorado and Dallas is that Dallas is a little bit more filled out as a team, and they have a little bit of a more off. I feel like they can generate more than just their top line. So they're more than just kind of 3 players, while Colorado, it was really just 3 players. So we'll see if Grubauer can do that. But the other player, another guy that I mentioned is Yanni Gourde. So this is, when we talked before the series, I said that Matty Beniers was going to have the most points and Jordan Eberle was going to be the team MVP from the first round. It ended up being that Yanni Gourde had the most points and Grubauer was the MVP of the first round. So for me, I'm looking back at Yanni Gourde, not from a point perspective. Yeah, he did have 6 points in 7 games, which is very impressive, but he was able to shut down that Colorado top pairing. And, up until game 6, what it was is that if that Gourde, Bjorkstrand, Eli Tolvanen, who, I mean, you look at just the fact that they got Bjorkstrand and Eli Tolvanen for essentially nothing this year, both of them. Tolvanen was a pickup, and Bjorkstrand was basically a trade away from Columbus for some reason. That line has become the best third line in the NHL right now. Like it's very hard to go against that. And when I was looking up until Game 6, so when that line had a shots for percentage, so they generated 50% or more of the shots compared to what they gave up, the Kraken won. If they were under 50%, the Kraken lost. So that line is going to be so massive. And if Yanni Gourde, Eli Tolvanen, and Oliver Bjorkstrand can outshoot and outchance their opponents, it is going to be massive for the Kraken in potentially advancing to the Western Conference Final.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes to show you how they're using the entire team, right? The entire roster to get through their opponents and stay competitive in these games. Matthew, what about for you? Is there a name here? You mentioned Jason Robertson, and we talked a little bit about how he only had the 2 goals. Does he need to turn it up for Dallas here? Is there somebody else you're watching? Who's kind of the key player for the Stars?
Well, it's going to be Roope Hintz again. I mean, he was just so good in the first series, and then, his speed. I mean, the Kraken had to deal with McKinnon's speed in the first series, and Rantanen was probably the only guy that was really scoring a lot for them. So they would deal with Hintz, who scored a lot in his first series too. So him, Jason Robertson, and see how Pavelski is going to be after that concussion. He's good to go, but with concussions, you can be taken out again with another hit. So it's going to be interesting to watch how Pavelski, if he looks back to normal, sounds like he's going to go right back to the top line and right back to where he was. So we'll see how Pavelski does. I think that's a big player I'm going to be watching in Game 1 to see how he looks, because he was so good during the regular season. He's been so good in the playoffs. They looked to him for his leadership, for his experience, and he was productive in the playoffs. He's been productive in the playoffs in the past. So I think he's going to be key to this series, along with Hintz, along with Robertson, that whole line. And then, just content that depth that was scoring, like Dadonov scoring 3 goals. And, some of these other guys just stepping out of nowhere. Wyatt Johnston, rookie, getting his first goal. So it's like, there's a lot of guys, like I said, Mason Marchment was going to be an underrated type guy. He had a couple goals in the first series, but he could potentially be another interesting player to watch in this one. So, and then one other guy I'll throw out is Miro Heiskanen. He had 6 assists in the first series too. So in the first round. So and we know what he did in the regular season. So if he can keep that going in their power play, they're going to be tough for the Seattle Kraken. I mean, their penalty kill was good, so that's I guess a good thing. But their power play, and the Dallas Stars had one of the top ranked penalty kills in the first round. So we'll have to see. But those are all players that are going to have to continue or step up in this series.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Both teams need multiple players to do their job, right? Let's do 2 topics in one here for this next one. Adam, we'll start with you. I want to know if you recognized or saw or thought there was a turning point in the last series between Seattle and Colorado, and then what you think might be either a turning point or a key for the Seattle Kraken moving into this series. So was there a moment when the Kraken were playing Colorado, whether it was that first win or the vibe of the home crowd getting into it? Like, was there something that you saw that was like, that's when Seattle knew they probably had a shot here or could win this thing? And is there something that you think they need to do against Dallas to give them the same sort of fortune?
Well, I think the big turning point in that series was the Makar hit on McCann, because it knocked out Jared McCann. He hasn't been back. We don't know if he's going to be ready for the second round series. But it kind of made it that the whole team rallied around that. And then you watch, Jaden Schwartz scoring that OT winner in front of the Seattle Kraken fans, like for their first ever home playoff win. And then their performance in Game 5. It was just like, it just felt like after that Game 4, with everything that happened, the Kraken really had a chance. And I know that they didn't get it done in Game 6 in front of their fans, and that they really had to lean on Grubauer in Game 7, but it was, even though they were outplayed in Game 7, and that they really had to rely on Grubauer, it didn't feel like they were out of the game. Like, it just felt like that they were going to do it, even though they weren't necessarily controlling the game, and they were kind of sitting back and letting Colorado come at them in waves. When McKinnon and Rantanen were on the ice, it happened. When everybody else did, it was kind of more balanced. But the turning point is going to be, can the Kraken score the first goal in games against the Dallas Stars? The Kraken scored the first goal in every single game against the Colorado Avalanche, and that kind of set off this motion that Seattle knew that they could score, that they knew that they could compete with Colorado, because we all know how important that first goal in a game is, how much of a momentum changer that is. So if the Seattle Kraken can continue what they're doing and generate goals in the first period and have leads going into the first intermission, I think that might be one of those moments that we look back on this series if the Kraken do end up pulling off the upset.
Yeah, I don't know what the stats are for like all the teams in the playoffs when the first goal is scored in those games and what the result is at the end of the regulation with teams winning after scoring the first goal, but I'm sure it's probably really high. Like usually that first goal is a huge indicator as to the result. There were some comebacks in the playoffs in the first round, but it's more often I think that the team that scores first tends to win. Matthew, what about you? Are you going to go with something similar like the Pavelski hit? Is that the turning point in the Dallas Stars series? Because I mean, obviously that was a big one. Did that rally Dallas around what was going on, or was there something else that you noticed? And what do you think the Stars are going to need to do to sort of, motivate themselves or get themselves going in the series?
Well, I think that hit was a big one because the next game they blew out the Wild, they 7-1. So it's like, but then the Minnesota Wild, or 7-3, and then the Wild turned around and made it 5-1 in the next game. So, I mean, after that, it seemed like Ottinger took over. I think that was a big thing because the Wild just couldn't score on him. He only allowed 3 goals in the last, 4 goals in the last 4 games. So it's like he started becoming the Ottinger of last year when the Calgary Flames just couldn't score on him. And if that becomes the case against the Kraken have a hard time because it could become a goaltending duel, actually, which would be fun to see. But I think that hit definitely was because they rallied around it. And all of a sudden you have certain players stepping up and scoring like Sagan and guys like that. And this is one, like I said, one of their leaders going down on a hit and from a guy that, was a questionable hit too. So, if he comes back and he's back to normal, but I think that was a big turning point. And then obviously right after, I think after that 5-1 game, Ottinger just kind of turned it on. I think that was a big turning point too after game 5 or game 3.
I'm really interested to see what would happen if it becomes a goaltending duel. Like you mentioned, Jake Ottinger was so good against Calgary last season. And he's showing again that he's got that ability to do it this year. But as Adam mentioned, Grubauer was really good. Like he was, whether it was living up to having played against Colorado or played with, and then now against Colorado, and that was what was vibing him and moving him forward, or maybe he's just figuring it out and he's going to be that solid for the rest of the playoffs. I don't really know. I would give the edge probably to Dallas in a goaltending duel, but at the same time, all it takes is for somebody to get hot for a little bit. Let's talk about MVPs that we're going to predict for this series. So Adam, I'll start with you. Who do you think is going to be, I mean, maybe you've already covered this, maybe we have sort of talked about this already, but if you had to pick one person, if you like, this is the MVP, is it Grubauer? Because you mentioned him a couple of times as the guy that maybe have to put everybody on his back. Is he going to be the MVP of this series if Seattle ends up winning it?
Well, I think Grubauer is going to decide the series, but I think that the player that is going to really be the MVP of the Kraken is James Schwartz. Like James Schwartz was so good during this series. 2 goals, 3 assists, 5 points. He had 11 shots on goal in that game 4. This is a guy who knows how to win. He's a leader on this team. Potential maybe captain next year. We'll see how they go, but he's been wearing a letter. He's won a Stanley Cup. He shows up for the playoffs, and even though he might not end up on the score sheet, he is so vital to this Kraken team just from his presence on the ice. He knows what to do. He knows how to kill the clock in those situations where he needs to. He's not one of these, I'm going to dump the puck in. He's one of these guys who knows how to cycle it properly, who knows how to create these opportunities. And if the Kraken can finally cash in on the power play, he's going to be a big part of the reason why. So I think that James Schwartz is going to be one of those guys that we look at the end of the series that had a massive series. I know he was a -5 in against the Colorado Avalanche, but he really was fantastic the whole series, and he is going to be massive for them moving forward.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty solid pick. I like Schwartz. I think there's a reason that he chose him, but they wanted to sign him. I think he's going to be a key player for them moving forward here, especially in the series. Matthew, what about you? Is there an MVP that you're thinking will probably really stand out above the rest for Dallas?
I'm going to mention him again, Rupe Hintz. Like he was amazing in the first round, and I think he's going to be a key player in this one again. So I'm going to say it's going to be him, or is this going to be Jake Ottinger, or it'll be a two-handed monster, because I think Ottinger's going to have to be good in this series anyway. But the way he's kind of going, I think it could be a two-headed MVP, Hintz and Ottinger, because if Ottinger's on fire and he doesn't allow many goals, the Stars have enough firepower to win, and they only need to score 2 or 3 goals then to win, because Ottinger's not going to let in more than 2, it seems. And the last bunch of games he hasn't. So there you go. So I'm going to say I'll decide and say it's Ottinger as an MVP, because I think that's going to be a big player in this series if the Stars come out of it.
Yeah, well, I think going with the goaltender is usually a pretty safe bet, especially when they can steal a game or two. For me, I'll get in on this. I'm going to choose somebody from the Dallas Stars. I'm going to go Jason Robertson. I think the fact that he had 46 goals in the regular season, only scored 2 in the series against Minnesota, he's primed for an explosion. I'll even go out on a limb and say he gets 5 goals in this series. So I think that he's probably going to be a player that will sort of pick it up and go, like, he had points, but just didn't score a lot compared to what we were expecting. And I think we're going to see that in the series. All right, Adam, I'm going to let you predict where you're going with this series. So that'll be how we close this off. What do you think? Is it Seattle that takes it? In how many games? Are you going to be on the other side and go, well, they got through 1 round, maybe they can't get through 2? Where are you sitting with this one? What's your prediction for this series?
I just look at Jake Ottinger and like Miro Heiskanen and that Dallas kind of top 4 or top 6, and like I have a feel it's one of those situations where like your head says that Dallas is going to win, but your heart says that Seattle's going to pull out the win. But I think, when you look at everything, how the two teams have stacked up over the regular season, how they played in the first round, the fact that, Dallas is good on the power play and the penalty kill, while Seattle just can't score a power play goal. And they actually gave up a shorthanded goal. And, you talk about Hintz. Hintz had a shorthanded goal, power play goal, and an even strength goal in the series. So I just think that I think that the Dallas Stars are going to pull this out in 6 games. But if the Kraken do end up winning, I wouldn't be surprised. But just like based off of the data, everything, looking at the comparisons between the two teams, and just the fact that, Dallas is getting back Joe Pavelski and Seattle is potentially not getting back Burakovsky and McCann, I think that that's going to swing the series enough that Dallas will walk away with it. I also have Dallas as my in the Stanley Cup in my playoff bracket, so it would kind of be against what I predicted earlier to say that Seattle was going to win.
Well, now that we know that, you didn't have to tell anybody that. Yeah, I know. I hear you. Okay, Matthew, what about you? Where are you predicting this series is going to go?
Yeah, I'm going with the Stars as well. I think it's going to be a long series, though. I think it's going to go 7, and I predicted 7 for a lot of series in the first round, and I was almost right with a lot of them. So I'll stick with that. I'm going to go Stars in 7, and going to that, the Stars also, their face-off percentages for all their centermen above 60%. So puck possession is going to be a big thing, and the Kraken were under 40. I think it was around 40-ish% for face-off. So they got to step that up, or they won't have the puck most of the game, and that's not a good recipe against a team like the Stars. And with Hintz, yeah, he had points in almost in every situation. 7 power play points, shorthanded, even strength, everything. So he can do everything. Yeah, so I'm going to go Stars in 7 for all those reasons, the special teams, and then for goaltending, I think Ottinger's going to outplay Grubauer, but we'll have to see. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with both of you and say I think it's going to be the Stars too. I'm going to be a little different. I could easily see this series stretching out to 7, but I'm going to go Stars in 5. I think that they're just too good a team. I think they're maybe one of the best teams left in the Western Conference. Edmonton's my team, so I'm going to stick with them to probably get to the final, but it wouldn't shock me at all if it winds up being Edmonton and Dallas. I like Dallas a lot. I think they're a really strong team. I think they've got the pieces. And Adam, I think you nailed it when you said McCann and Burakovsky both being out of the series potentially could be a real difference maker. Seattle's good. I'm just wondering if maybe they use a lot of their energy in that first round. So we'll see if that plays a factor here. And if they have and they've expended and kind of emptied the tank a little bit, I think it could go quickly in the Stars' favor. So I'm going Stars in 5, but wouldn't shock me at all if it goes 7 games. So, but we're going Stars either way. So clean sweep for the Stars, but we'll see. You never know. Seattle could pull the Golden Knights and surprise everybody. So that'll be a lot of fun. Thanks guys for doing this. We appreciate it. Everybody else that's watching these videos. This was the first of many second round playoff series previews. Check out the YouTube channel. Look at both of these writers' work on the Hockey Raiders. They're going to be covering the playoffs again. And perhaps we'll have one of you back, which I'm sure we will, at least one of you, for a third round series between whoever makes it out of this second round and the Western Conference Final. So thanks, everybody. Talk to you in the next playoff preview series and have a fantastic and enjoy the series. It's going to be a lot of fun. Take care, everybody.